Alright, next I'm going to go ahead and start the potatoes on the stove. I've got a big heavy pot. You can use a Dutch oven or any other sort of cooking pot that you like, whatever size. And for now I'm going to start it on a small burner on high, simply because I only have one large burner, but we'll move it over here once the bacon is done cooking. I'm going to give it a little bit of sea salt. It's a great opportunity to flavor your potatoes when you first start by putting salt in the water for when they start to cook, because they'll start to absorb some of the salt right at the beginning. Alright, we've got our second batch of bacon finished. These ones got a little darker than I would have liked, but they'll be just fine. And I'm actually going to pour off most of the excess bacon grease into, you normally would use a coffee cup, but the bowl is handy, so we'll pour most of that off. And I'm going to be careful not to let the bacon grease underneath stay on the bottom of the pan, because we could cause a kitchen fire. We don't want that. Go ahead and put it back on the stove, and I'm just going to heat it over medium heat. And then we'll add our diced garlic, chopped garlic, and onions to the pan, just to give them a little cook time. Gently cook them, and they can absorb some of the yummy bacon bits and grease off the bottom. So we've got our onions and garlic working together in the pan. And I'm actually going to take a little bit of hot water from our potato water that started on the other burner, and that's going to help to collect the bacon bits that are kind of sleeping on the bottom of the pan. Just want to kind of blend it all up together, start breaking up that onion. And cook these over just a medium heat, nice and gently, so they can start to caramelize. And again, I really don't want to get my garlic roasted, I just want to soften it. I'm not going for a roasted garlic taste today. We'll go ahead and let those work together on the medium heat for a few minutes. Alright, I've got the onions and garlic to about where I want them. They're not quite cooked all the way through, but I'm starting to see some of the garlic getting dark, and I really don't want it to get any darker than that. So I'm going to move it to a back burner and go ahead and transfer potato soup to the large burner, working with limited stove action here, but that's fine. I want to bring this to a boil, so I'm going to turn the water up to high, and I'll give it just a tad more salt. And once it's started to boil, I'm going to go ahead and throw in our potatoes, which are starting to turn a little bit pink. This isn't going to affect the potatoes in the soup, but if you want to try to avoid that, you can just store them in cold water. Cover them completely in cold water while they're sitting until you're ready to use them. In fact, we're starting to get a low rolling boil, so I'm going to go ahead and start putting them in. And I'm going to get them real close to the top surface of the water because I don't want them to splatter. And just use my spoon to gently pour them in. And I've been really careful not to add too much water to start cooking these with, because these are going to actually, this will be the soup, the finished product. We're not going to drain this or lose any of the water, and we don't want to lose any of the flavor. So we're going to go ahead and let those start to boil. Probably boil them about 10-15 minutes till they start to get soft, and then I'll go ahead and incorporate the onions, garlic, and bacon. I'm going to go ahead and I've separated the bacon into two groups. We've got the chewier bacon, the first batch, which is still going to maintain most of its consistency if cooked in the soup. So that's going to go in the soup. The remaining bacon that's crispier I'm going to serve as a topping on the side when the soup is put into bowls, and it'll maintain its salty flavor. Sometimes bacon has a tendency to kind of break down in the soup, and while it does flavor the soup, you don't get to enjoy that salty, meaty bacon taste, which is quite nice. You want to preserve that if possible. So I'm just going to break these up into bite-sized pieces, kind of give them a rough chop. They don't have to be perfect. I haven't once had anybody complain about a piece of bacon being too big, so we'll probably be fine. Alright, we'll check on our potato soup here, the beginnings of it. The potatoes are softening up. I'm going to continue to let them cook down for just a little bit longer. What I want to see is a potato that will be cut easily, and this is still giving me quite a bit of resistance. You can also take one and kind of try to smash it up against the side of the pan to check for doneness. Just let those cook for a little bit longer. We've gotten to the place where the potatoes are tender. I like to let them get a little bit tender because I don't want to cook these vegetables, well, the onion and garlic, down too much by boiling them. But now I'm going to introduce them to the potatoes. I'm going to scrape all the good little tidbits out of the pan. And we'll set the pan aside and go ahead and incorporate those. Next we'll add one portion of the bacon, of course reserving the crispier bacon as a topping once the soup is ready to be served. Give that a good stir. And I try to wait towards the end to salt anymore, but I'm going to give a little bit more salt and some fresh ground pepper. And finally also some granulated garlic. It packs a punch, and even though we have fresh garlic in there, they do bring different flavors to the table. I do appreciate both of the flavors, so we're going to do both of those today. Go ahead and stir those in. And we've got the pan set on medium-high. I'd like to see that get to a boil. It looks like we are boiling, so I'm going to turn it down to a little above medium and let it cook for 5 to 10 more minutes. We're down to the final stages of our soup. It's been boiling for about 20-25 minutes total. The potatoes have softened a great deal. It's ready to be eaten. The great thing about this soup is that depending on how much water you put in, you can control the thickness of the soup. If you want to, towards the end of cooking, you can take a spoon and squish some of the cooked potatoes, and what you'll get is a thicker, as you can see, I'll get rid of that, you get a thicker, chunkier soup that's almost more like a chowder. And on the same vein, we're going to go ahead and add some half and half to the soup. You can also use 2% milk. If you're concerned about fat or calorie content, you can use skim milk. Of course, it won't be as rich as if you use half and half or 2%, and that just gives the soup kind of a great creamy taste and look. And at this point, once the half and half has been incorporated, I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity to salt the soup since it's right about ready to be served. And I do get a little heavy with the salt with the potato soup because it is so starchy. I find that for my personal taste, I like quite a bit of it. Fresh ground pepper makes all the difference in the world. If you can get a grinder, this one was $2 or $3 at Costco, I think. It's a great investment. The bite of fresh ground pepper gives a huge difference to the taste of your meals. And we're ready to serve. Go ahead and just add some of the crispy bacon to the top. Of course, that's just a preference of mine. You can also top it with sour cream, fresh chives, things of that nature. So in a fairly short amount of time, we've got a great soup that's really hearty in the cold winter months with fairly few ingredients and didn't take very long to make.